In today's episode of Locked On Pistons podcast, we will be answering all the questions you guys sent in for a special edition of a Mailbag episode. We'll talk about all of it, answer all of your guys' questions in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs have winded down, the sports have stopped sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. You'll hear more about FanDuel a little bit later. So, another update for you guys. Just again, we're going to continue to give an update for anyone who happens that didn't listen to last episode or a future episode, etc. I am recording this episode on the 4th of July. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed. You guys' happy 4th of July. But this episode will be published the following Tuesday because I am going to be out the country from July 5th to July 10th, which means I have to have some future episodes for you guys. You guys are listening to past coup. You guys are listening to July 4th coup. So I thought that a fun episode for you guys to listen to is a mailbag episode. And I went through some of these questions already. We're going to get into the questions, obviously, but I went through some of these questions, and there is a possibility that by the time I get back from Iceland, I look pretty stupid. Like, either I'm going to look like a genius, I'm going to look, whatever, normal, or I'm going to look incredibly stupid because it's possible the Pistons will do something during this time that makes one of these answers sound completely idiotic. So who knows? We'll see what happens. I think you guys will have fun being able to listen to coup before these moves taking place and see how wrong or how right or how off I really was. So let's go ahead and get into it. You guys sent in a lot of questions, so we'll try to get through all of them. This should be just a fun, relaxing episode. So go ahead and kick back, put your feet up, get a snack, and just let's just relax and enjoy our time. Because while you guys are listening to this, I will be doing the same thing in Iceland, just relaxing. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into the question. So this one is from Jake Barron from Twitter. He says, given the desire for spacing and rim protection, why wouldn't they start Stewart over Jalen Duren? Pairing Assar Thompson and Isaiah Stewart in the starting lineup would provide them with the better defense and hypothetical spacing. So that is something that I've seen quite a few fans discuss, and it was something we brought up on the podcast, I believe, like last month. We didn't really spend a lot of time on it, but I did just briefly bring up the fact of the Pistons could decide that, if we believe, let's say we're talking as the Pistons, we believe that we want to start Assar, but he needs a stretch five next to him. And we also need to improve our defense at the 5 position. It seems like, and this, again, we're going to quickly run into the very first scenario where I could look very stupid in a week, but it seems like the Pistons are trying to acquire one in trade. But what's the possibility that Trajan's just like, well, why do we need to trade for him? We have one right now on the roster. We just start Isaiah Stewart. I can't say that's completely out of the realm of possibility, but I do find it unlikely for a few reasons. One, I think Jalen Duren is just higher on the priority list right now than Isaiah Stewart. And I think if he is on the roster by the time the season starts, he will just have a higher priority in the developmental chain. I think that's one. I don't think they'll bench him for Stu. And secondly, the second reason why I say this is because Stu has proven, I think, to all of us that he is best used as the backup 5. And one of the things that Trajan has mentioned is that he wants to create an environment for all the young guys to play their right roles so they can achieve what they should be able to achieve, so they can reach their goals. But the only way they can do that is if they're in the right environment, in their right roles, not in a role where they shouldn't be asked to do this thing or too big of a role for this, or, like we've seen from the Pistons over the last 4 years where guys are asked to do more than they should be being asked to do. That's something he said he does not want to happen. So if that's the case, do you really want to start Stu when it seems like that? I feel like to everybody, his best value, and incredible value, by the way, but his best value is as a backup 5. I don't know. And then the last reason I would have for is I think Isaiah Stewart may get traded in the next few days or the next few weeks. As of right now, we've heard his name in the trade market more than anyone else. I think he has to be one of the likelier ones to be traded if something does happen. Again, as I'm recording this, the Pistons still have $26.5 million in space. This could be completely off by the time you guys listen to it. But as of I'm recording July 4th, around 3:30 p.m., the Pistons have $26.5 million in cap space. So, heck, maybe they've already traded Stu by the time you guys listen to this. Who knows? Again, this is another example of you guys. I may sound idiotic by the time, and you guys may have some fun with it. But that's my reasoning for why I don't think that they would go with Stu. But I do think it's a fair question and an understandable question. The next question is from Brendan Brunk on Twitter. He says, how many wins do we need to win this year for you to think it was a first successful season of rebuilding under Trajan? Well, I think the main thing is they definitely can't be the worst team in the NBA again. Like, they can't be that. If they are the worst team in the NBA again, it's a complete failure. I don't care if this is a rebuild season. I don't care. You cannot be the worst team in the NBA again. You just cannot be. That's number one. Number two, let's not compete for the worst season in franchise history again. Like, let's be clearly above that level. Like, let's not have that be something like, oh God, could they break it again in January? Like, let's not have me recording an episode in January where I'm asking about the possibility of them breaking the record again. So that should be the basic, very basic of success. But all joking and all, trolling aside, I'd say a successful season, you have to at least win like you have to be at least near 30 wins, right? Like, I think that has to be the floor. Like, you have to be near 30 wins. I wanted to say at least 30, but that would be a 16-win improvement. And while I think they could do that, it's just that's a lot of games to jump. So I'd have to say at least near 30. Like, you have to be at least around there, be competitive. Like, I think that a lot of people may consider that just a success, but I think there is a lot of the fan base that would view that as a disappointment, to be honest, because of how bad the last 4 years went. I can't blame them. But with what it feels like Trajan's building, what he's trying to do this year, again, at this point in time, on July 4th, when I'm recording this, I don't think they're going to be making crazy win now moves. So I'd say at least near 30 wins, and that would be viewed, I think, as like an okay season at the very least. But again, you can't be the worst team in the league again. Next question is from My Pistons on Twitter. It says, what is a realistic 3% goal for Assar this year? I'm thinking 33%. If he gets 1 of 3 or his 3-pointers will be a bigger asset. Thoughts? 33% is a pretty big jump. If Assar got to 33% this year, I think a lot of things start getting talked about differently with the Pistons. That's a pretty big jump from where he was this past year. It's hard to project Assar as an outside shooter because remember, pre-draft, I was higher on his outside shot. Pre-draft, he had a lot of self-created looks in the OTE from the NBA line, especially towards the end of their season and in the playoffs. He wasn't hitting catch and shoot threes. He was hitting sidestep, step back, crossover, step back three. Like, he was hitting self-created threes on good percentages towards the end of the season. And then the Pistons season started, he just couldn't hit anything. So I don't know. It's tough because I thought he'd be a better 3-point shooter this past year, and he was very much not. So I'd say a realistic goal for him would be like 27%, I think. 27, 28. I think if he's above 30%, it's an absolute amazing win. Crazy win. But I think the realistic goal for him, 3-point wise, is probably like around 28% from deep. If he's above that, I think it's telling some really good things. And maybe Fred Vincent has worked magic in one offseason. But I don't think that's probably happening for Assar in just one offseason. But let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter @KukaHill. If you guys agree with these answers, let me know in the comment section down below if I look like an idiot right now. Isaiah Stewart may be traded already. They may have already used their $26.5 million in space by the time you listen to this. Let me know in the comment section down below what's going on or over on Twitter @KukaHill. Coming up, we'll answer even more of your guys' questions on today's episode of a Mailbag episode. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA and get on your way to being your best self. Comparison is the thief of joy. It's easy to envy other people's lives. It might look like they have it all together on their Instagram, on their Twitter, on their Snapchat, whatever social media, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have so you can start living your best life today. If you're thinking of starting therapy, Give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review or whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, let's get back to some of the questions that you guys sent in. This one is from Will McDowell. If you had to pick one, do you think the best long-term backcourt teammate for Cade is another PG or a 3-and-D wing? I want to say a 3-and-D wing, but that it doesn't. I think either or could work, but the PG I would say has to be like a taller one. Like, for example, I think people would probably consider, I'm just throwing this name out because the first one comes to my mind. I think most people would consider Lonzo Ball to be a point guard. So that archetype where you're like a 6'6", 6'7" kind of point guard, you have defensive versatility, you're a really good catch and shooter. You're not necessarily the guy you want in the ball in your hands all the time, but you're a really good playmaker. You can set the table offensively. You can play off ball, and you play really good defense. You can switch. If that's the kind of point guard you're talking about, then yes, that would work really well too. But what also work really well is a 3-and-D wing next to him, like potentially what maybe Trajan has envisioned for Ron Holland, maybe something like that. Maybe an Assar Thompson too, as well. If they view Assar Thompson as someone who could potentially become a decent three-point shooter. A player like that, I think either one of those options are really good. I think the main thing that you want next to Cade, and something that I've talked about for a while with Cade, when building around Cade, I should say, the main thing I'd like next to Cade is size. The fact that you have a point guard who's around 6'6", 6'7", you should be using that to your benefit, to where you don't have small guys on the floor. The fact that the guy who is running your offense doesn't have to be a 6'2", 6'3" point guard. He's 6'6", 6'7". Everyone else on the floor should be 6'6" and above. So now you can switch across the floor. You don't have people on the floor that offenses can go hunt and go take advantage of because they're just smaller and they target them on the defensive end. I think you saw that obviously with the Boston Celtics. Derek White ran a lot of point guard for him. He's pretty big. Like, you can't target Derek White. And the rest of their lineup are switchable defenders. That's what I think is the main thing next to Cade. Whether it's a scorer, whether it's a sniper, whatever it is, the main thing for me is someone with size. If Cade's your starting point guard, I do not want anyone else shorter than Cade starting next to him. If you have everyone his height or above, the positional versatility that you have defensively is tremendous, and that is supposed to be part of the benefits of having a bigger point guard. If you weren't going to reap the benefits of having a bigger point guard, why even have one? So that's the main thing I've always held firm on with Cade. You have a big point guard, you should have a big lineup across the board. You should be able to switch across the board. There should be no weak links in your defense because of size. If you have a guy who's bigger, but maybe not the greatest defender, you can work around that. If you have a guy who's small, who also isn't a good defender, he's just going to get picked on and played off the court. And there's no reason why you should be doing that if you have a 6'7" point guard, 6'6" point guard. There's no reason. So that's the big thing for me, what I want next to Cade. Size, positional versatility. That's the main thing to me, putting next to Cade Cunningham. Next question is from, this is a really cool name. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it correctly, but it's a cool name. Shalimore the God, I think is how you pronounce it on Twitter, says, which position are you most concerned about upgrading? At this point, it's definitely the center position. Whether it means trading Duren to get it, whether it means trading Stu and moving Duren to the backup 5 position. By far, the position I'm most concerned about, and I think the Pistons are most concerned about, is the rim protection and defensive ability of their 5-man. They had one of the worst defensive big man rooms in the league this past year between Duren and Wiseman. Awful. Just straight up terrible. And it's one of the areas that I've been told throughout the offseason is one of their main focuses. And we've seen them linked to Claxton. We saw them linked to Hardenstein. I think you may see them get somebody in the trade market involving a rim protecting big. I think by far this is easily the most concerning position to upgrade. You have to have some kind of backline defense. You have to have, whether it's trading Duren for it, or if you're trading Stu to go get a veteran 5 to start over Duren, who is a rim protecting, who is a really good defensive big that he can learn from, so he can eventually become that maybe in the future. Whichever one of those has to happen. I think absolutely one of those has to absolutely happen. If it doesn't, I'm going to be pretty concerned, especially if you're going to start Tobias Harris and Jalen Duren together. That front court defensively, that is going to be pretty bad defensively. If you're starting Tobias, I really think you need to get a defensive center, or you're really just banking on hope with Jalen Duren when he hasn't really provided any reason to believe he is going to be a defensive center. So you have to have, I think that's easily the most concerning position to have to upgrade here. This one's from Finn Oliver. How realistic is a Duren or Ivy trade at this point in the offseason? Again, this is another question that I may look stupid when this episode drops, because maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But I think it is a pretty realistic possibility. I think as of right now, this is why I say to you guys, as of right now, I would say one of Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, or Jaden Ivey will be traded. That's what I'd say right now. I'm recording this on July 4th. I would say as of right now, one of those 3 guys are going to be traded. I'd be shocked if none of those 3 got traded. I think at least one of them will. So simply because of that, I think that makes the possibility of a Duren or Ivy trade realistic. Again, as of recording this, the Pistons have $26 million in cap space. They're in the trade market. I know this. Everyone knows this, I feel like. They are in the trade market for sure, trying to look at possible upgrades, ways to get upgrades and assets at the same time. That's why they've held on to this cap space 4 days into free agency instead of splurging. They are trying to find this trade, and it may include, I think it will include, one of Duren, Ivy, or Stu. So I think it's pretty likely. Next question is from Statman05. Do you think the Detroit Pistons should have re-signed James Wiseman? No. Next question is, give me 3 good reasons why a Pistons fan should be excited for this upcoming season. I mean, I don't think that's too hard. Number 1, Cade Cunningham. Cade's always going to be number 1 on these lists. He's your franchise player. He's improved each year. He should be getting even better this offseason. I know for a fact, by the way, that he is right now working his tail off still. Like, he is grinding right now. Like, multiple workouts a day. He is grinding right now. Absolutely put it in the work. I know people saw the clip of him working out with Brandon Ingram a few days ago. I'm telling you guys right now, it goes beyond that. He is grinding his you-know-what off right now. He is putting in the work. So I think number 1 is Cade Cunningham. Number 2, be excited for a new regime and a new head coach, a new front office and a new head coach, and see how the Pistons play. What is their identity? What is the identity they're trying to create? What's the culture they are trying to create? How different do they play compared to last season's? Like, how different does this team look? That is number 2 for me. And then number 3, for me, what I'm excited to watch for this season, I would say Assar and Ron Holland. If those 2 do play, not even together, just those 2, I know Assar is going to play, but if Ron ends up getting minutes, seeing those 2 play this year and seeing if the Pistons do have their 2 future long-term, legitimate, elite potential wings at that size on both ends of the floor, 2-way wings, if they have those 2 guys, you see glimpses of that, I think that will be potentially maybe even more exciting than anything else. Because that's something the Pistons have lacked since I started watching them. I feel like they've lacked that. So if they have that in Ron and Assar and they flash that this year, I think that is going to be a very big reason to be excited. So watch for them, see if they show potential of that. I think that very easily could become the most exciting thing of this season. So let me know in the comment section down below. Again, if I sound stupid a few days later, has things changed the outcome of some of these answers? Do you guys agree with some of my answers? Again, let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter @KukaHill. Coming up, we will answer more of your guys' questions again on today's special edition Mailbag episode. I love sports. I have loved sports my whole life. I've played them my whole life. I love them so much, I never really want them to stop. But as the playoffs have winded down, we obviously got fewer games to watch. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. And all I have to do is open the app and dream up any bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every single day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. I've told you guys this many times. I tried out FanDuel a few years ago. I have yet to turn back. Super easy to use, super self-explanatory, and obviously the most important thing, extremely fun to use. So again, head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer today. That's what FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. So at this point in the podcast, we have probably about 27 more questions, I think. So I'm going to try to go rapid fire at this point. I don't want to give you guys a long episode, anything like that. So we're going to try to go rapid fire so I can get as many of your guys' questions in as I can. So let's go ahead and start the timer now. What's the timer at right now? I have the timer set at 21 minutes. Okay. Set the timer now. This one's from Arthur. Says on Twitter, what specifically do you feel Duren has to work at to become a good defender? With his athletic traits, what's stopping him from becoming not only a good defender, but quite possibly a very good defender? I just think a guy with that type of athleticism can be really good. My first answer will be athleticism doesn't always correlate with defensive ability. I would say that. I know a lot of people often think that, but that's not always the case. That's first. Second, I think Duren struggles a little bit from the fact that he is undersized at the 5 position. He's strong, but he's not the tallest, so I think he struggles with that. And thirdly, just like he doesn't seem to have the feel on the defensive end and the at times the want to or the motor to play defense and to disrupt shots around the rim. Also, the timing isn't always off. He doesn't understand angles very well either, especially when he's in drop coverage. He's not very good in that. So I think I know people think they just look at Duren and say, look, he's a star. Look how athletic he is. He can jump out the gym. He's fast. Like, why can't he be good on defense? There's a lot more to defense than just that. And I'll say this, and this isn't just to Arthur. This is like to everybody. There is a reason why the Pistons are looking for a rim protecting big. If Duren had shown any reason to believe in his future defense, I don't think they do this. But for most people watching in the front office and for someone like myself who agrees with them, he hasn't shown really anything to believe that he's going to be a good defender relatively soon. He just hasn't. He hasn't flashed that. The example I always make is Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond, at the very young age, he flashed it. It wasn't consistent, but almost immediately, Andre flashed the ability to have fast hands, to be active in the passing lanes, in drop coverage, have his hands active and pick off bounce passes. He's shown the ability to attack at the rim, to go after shots and send them out of bounds, to block shots. I don't think Andre was ever an elite defender for long stretches. He had stretches where he was, but not long stretches. But I think for a lot of his time, especially towards the latter half of his career with the Pistons, he was a really good defender, I thought. So, but he showcased that immediately at a very young age. He flashed it. He wasn't a good defender instantly at all, but he flashed it. You saw what, you could see it. Duren, he doesn't attempt to block shots. He doesn't understand angles very well. He doesn't even attempt to block shots. He doesn't attempt to really get active in the passing lanes and drop coverage. And he often just lets guys go by him. His motor's an issue. So there's a lot of questions with Duren defensively, where it's not just about his athleticism would be my answer. And I said this would be a rapid fire round. I just took forever answering that one. Okay, we have to be a little bit faster with this. This is a question from Mr. Jones. Fred Vincent is being asked to do too much. Are there examples in history where an addition of a shooting coach completely turned around multiple players' jump shots from 20% to below 20% and below to above 30%? No. That's why I've said that, assuming that he's just going to come in and turn around 5 players' jump shots in one offseason, that just isn't realistic. It doesn't happen. I know with the Pelicans, he helped with Herb Jones, and he obviously worked with Trey Murphy, and he worked with Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball. That didn't happen in one offseason. Herb Jones is not just now becoming a really good shooter. That wasn't one offseason, all of a sudden, Lonzo, B.I., Trey Murphy, even though Trey Murphy was already a good shooting prospect, but you get what I'm saying. And Herb Jones and anyone else you want to bring out, all of a sudden, one offseason, oh, God, now we have snipers. That's not – first of all, that's not how it works, and it's not realistic. So he's a very important addition. Obviously, they believe in him as a shooting coach, but the assumption that he's just coming in and all of a sudden – guys are becoming snipers, it just is not going to happen. It just hasn't, and it's not going to. This one is from a long Twitter username. I'm not going to say it all, but the questions are, if no further trades are made for centers, which of Duren or Stu should start? I'm going to say to win games, I think Stu should start, but I think they will start Duren. And the second question, who on the team currently is Cade closest to personally? Do you mean like on a friendship level? On a friendship level, I don't feel comfortable answering that. If you mean like talent wise or like in the pecking order, I would say probably Assar, either Assar or Ron. But I think you were talking about friendship wise. I'm gonna pass back that one. I don't feel comfortable answering that one. Next question is from Trey on Twitter. How do you value the young core? Obviously, Cade is number one, but who is after that? All right, this is kind of like what we were just talking about. I would say it goes Cade, Assar, Ron, Gap, Duren, Ivy, or actually, no, I take that back. Cade, Gap, Assar, Ron, Gap. I think Stu is more viable than the other two, but I don't think he has a long-term future. I think he could be traded soon this offseason. But I'll put Stu because I think he's more viable. So I'd say Gap, Stu, and then Gap, Duren, Ivy. That's where I'd put it. That would be my answer as of right now. Next question is from Josh Bell. Says, do you think Ron will spend some time in the G League? I think definitely some time in the G League for sure. Who would be your starting lineup? I don't feel comfortable answering that yet. I don't know. I think they have more moves, so I don't know who would be it yet. But I did see Pistons Fleet tweet out a starting lineup I would be okay with. Cade, Assar, Simone, Tobias, and Duren. I think that makes sense offensively. Next question is from Pistons Teal. Says, is Luke Walton still on JB's coaching staff? I don't think we haven't heard anything about JB's coaching staff, but I don't think he's bringing. I mean, maybe he could, but we haven't really heard that he's bringing everyone from Cleveland over. We haven't really heard anything about that, so I don't know. We're not sure yet. This one's from Rise Scouting. What are the three biggest holes we have on our current roster? I would say backup point guard, rim protecting center, and one more spacer. That would be who I'd say, or what I'd say the three biggest holes are right now. Do you think Holland can make an impact right away and get playing time? Says Leo on Twitter. Let's see how he plays in Summer League. That would be my answer. Let's see how he looks in Summer League. What's the next step you'd like to see Cade take? This one's from Ethan 1KE. I think easily, Cade knows this. I think Cade and his camp both know this. Finishing around the rim. If he can turn some of those finishes, one, into free throw attempts, and two, easier finishes for himself, his game goes to a complete next level. I think he's an immediate all-star next year, like easy. So if he improves that aspect, I think spacing will help a lot with that, by the way. If the more spacing he has, I think the finishing numbers will get better. But also, I like to see him improve as a finisher. I think he's going to be working on his explosiveness this offseason. I think he's going to try to get some bounce. I think he's going to be spending a lot of time learning on how to draw free throws and use his body to get free throws. So some of those hard attempts turn into free throw attempts. Next one. Parker from Twitter says, which player do you think it could be that gets traded, and what do you think is a realistic trade that looks like? I'm going to go ahead and play it safe and say I think the most likely person to be traded is Stu. So I'm going to play it safe there. Even though I do think it's possible Ivy and Duren get traded. But as far as a trade package, who knows at this point? I think future assets have to be involved. I think that's the only way the Pistons make any trade. Next question. This one's from Kyle. He says, did you bet your life savings on the under yet? Not yet. I have not. I have not, but that has been a pretty good bet for the Pistons the last few years. So unless they do some big things, I might, that will be coming maybe. This one's from Xander. He says, what would the rest of the starting lineup need to look like to feel good about having Stewart as the starting center? Cade, Assar, Simone, and Tobias. Just like the lineup I said earlier, and just replace Stu with Duren. I think that would be really interesting. You use Assar a lot in the pick and roll. You use him as the one non-shooter, and maybe he has the ball in his hands a little bit more as a secondary creator, which I think he needs to. I think that opens a lot of stuff offensively, especially having Stu as a guy who can space the floor at the 5, pull the center away. Okay, what time are we at right now? I don't want to go. Okay, we're at 30 minutes. We'll go one more minute answering questions. All right. So since this is not a big year, what free agent available next year, 2025, and what should our cap look like next year? Depending on what they do, for the rest of this offseason, they should still have cap flexibility next season. Expiring contracts in Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris will be on a 1-year deal at that point. They should have plenty of flexibility with their cap next year, unless they do some move in the next few days that hurts that. Next one from Sean. Do you think Duren has a better chance to be an above-average anchor to a drop defense or a guy who can reasonably switch 1 through 4? Definitely not switch. I don't think he's going to be able to switch. He's going to have to. I think his only potential is as a drop defender, and I don't know how much I believe in it, but I think that is the scheme you'd have to run with Duren. I don't believe in his ability to switch. This question from Simon. What do you think needs to happen with the Pistons cap situation? We'll see next few days. That's my answer. This one's from Keon, I think. How would you design a strategy to get free agents or people you get from trades that re-sign in Detroit? Simple. Create a winning culture. You got to win games. You can't be the worst team in the league, competing for the worst team in the league every single year. You can't. It just can't happen. You got to prove that you're trying to win and you're on the upswing. Easy answer there. Top running mate you'd like to pair with Cade this year or the future? My answer will be stay tuned. That's my answer to that one. Just stay tuned. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know in the comment section down below. Again, how stupid do I look days later about some of these answers? Have things happened that have already changed? Like how good those answers sound? Or if you guys disagree with some of the answers or agree, let me know as well. Comment section down below or over on Twitter at @KukaHill. That's all I've got for you guys today. I'll catch you guys later. Stay safe out there. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. You're available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace out.